What if a quarter of our planet is so extreme that fish, the animals that dominate almost every ocean on Earth, simply cannot exist there? The deepest trenches of the ocean reach nearly 11 kilometers beneath the surface. Down there, sunlight vanished long ago. Temperatures hover just above freezing. The pressure is so immense it could crush a steel submarine like a soda can. And yet, despite conditions that seem completely hostile to life, the abyss is not empty. Creatures drift through the darkness. Strange ecosystems flourish around volcanic vents. Entire food chains survive without sunlight. But something strange happens as you descend deeper into the ocean. Fish, the familiar rulers of the marine world, slowly disappear. Below roughly 8 kilometers, they vanish entirely. Why? The answer reveals one of the most fascinating stories in biology. To understand it, we need to travel through the deepest environments on Earth and explore 4 enormous challenges that every deep-sea creature must overcome: finding food in a world of scarcity, surviving near-freezing temperatures, enduring toxic chemical environments, and finally, resisting pressures that threaten to tear life apart at the molecular level. And somewhere along that journey, we will discover why fish, remarkably adaptable as they are, hit a final biological wall in the deepest trenches of our planet. The first challenge waiting in the deep ocean is simple but brutal: almost nothing to eat. Near the surface of the ocean, sunlight fuels life. Tiny phytoplankton capture solar energy and form the base of a vast food web that supports everything from sardines to blue whales. But as you descend deeper into the water column, sunlight fades rapidly. By about 1,000 meters, the ocean enters permanent darkness. Below that point, food becomes incredibly scarce. Most deep-sea ecosystems survive on what scientists call marine snow. This is not snow in the traditional sense. Instead, it is a slow, constant rain of organic debris drifting down from the surface. Tiny particles of dead plankton, fragments of algae, fecal pellets, bits of mucus, and the occasional carcass slowly sink through the water column. It might not sound like much, but this gentle snowfall carries enormous importance. Each year, hundreds of millions of tons of organic carbon sink toward the ocean floor, redistributing energy from the sunlit world above to the darkness below. Many deep-sea animals have evolved remarkable ways to harvest these microscopic scraps. The vampire squid, despite its intimidating name, is not a predator at all. Instead, it stretches out long feeding filaments coated with sticky mucus. These delicate threads drift through the water like invisible fishing lines, collecting particles of marine snow. Once enough debris accumulates, the squid rolls the mucus into a compact ball and consumes it whole. In the deep ocean, survival often depends on patience more than speed. But marine snow alone cannot support every ecosystem in the deep sea. In certain places, life has discovered a completely different energy source, one that does not depend on sunlight at all. Along the mid-ocean ridges that stretch across the seafloor, volcanic activity creates hydrothermal vents. These towering chimney-like structures release superheated water, rich in minerals and chemicals from deep within the Earth's crust. Temperatures inside the vent plumes can exceed 350 degrees Celsius, yet the surrounding seawater remains just above freezing. At first glance, these environments appear deadly. The water is loaded with toxic chemicals such as hydrogen sulfide and methane. Yet hydrothermal vents host some of the most biologically productive ecosystems in the entire deep ocean. The secret lies in bacteria capable of chemosynthesis. Unlike plants that use sunlight to produce energy, these microbes harvest chemical energy from the vent fluids themselves. They oxidize hydrogen sulfide or methane and convert it into organic molecules that support entire communities of animals. Giant tube worms, some over 2 meters tall, rely completely on these bacteria. They lack mouths and digestive systems entirely. Instead, specialized tissues inside their bodies house dense colonies of symbiotic microbes that produce nutrients for them. In the absence of sunlight, chemistry becomes the engine of life. Not all deep-sea food chains begin with microscopic particles drifting from above, or with chemical reactions rising from the seafloor. Sometimes an entire ecosystem begins with a single dramatic event, the death of a giant animal. When a whale dies in the open ocean, its massive body begins a slow and silent descent into the abyss. The journey can last hours or even days, as the carcass sinks through layer after layer of darkening water. Around it, the ocean grows colder, the pressure intensifies, and the last traces of sunlight disappear. Eventually, the body settles onto the seafloor, often thousands of meters below the surface, where life is normally sparse and food is painfully scarce. This moment is known as a whale fall. For deep-sea organisms, it is nothing short of a feast. The scent of decaying flesh spreads through the water and scavengers soon arrive. Sleeper sharks glide in from the darkness. Hagfish burrow into the soft tissue. Rat-tail fish circle the carcass, tearing away pieces of meat. Over months, and sometimes years, the whale's flesh is slowly stripped away, scattering nutrients across the surrounding seafloor. But the story does not end with the bones. Once the skeleton remains, a new community begins to take over. Among the most extraordinary inhabitants are bone-eating worms from the genus Osedax, often called zombie worms. These bizarre animals possess no mouth, no stomach, and no digestive system. Instead, they grow delicate root-like structures that bore deep into the whale's bones. From these roots, they release acids that dissolve the mineral structure of the bone itself. Symbiotic bacteria living inside the worm's tissues then break down the exposed fats and proteins, converting them into nutrients the worm can absorb. What began as the death of a single whale gradually transforms into a thriving deep-sea ecosystem, sustaining life in the darkness for decades. Even if food can be found, another challenge waits in the depths: cold. Across most of the deep ocean, temperatures hover only a few degrees above freezing. In polar regions, the water grows even colder, approaching the freezing point of seawater itself. Under these conditions, biology slows to a crawl, metabolism drops, chemical reactions unfold at a sluggish pace. Growth takes longer, and every movement must be carefully balanced against limited energy. Yet, evolution rarely wastes a harsh environment. In some cases, the cold becomes an advantage. In many frigid oceans, scientists observe a strange pattern known as polar gigantism. Animals living in these icy waters often grow dramatically larger than their relatives in warmer seas. The Southern Ocean around Antarctica offers some of the most striking examples of this phenomenon. Sea spiders that normally measure only a few millimeters across can grow to the size of dinner plates, their spindly legs stretching outward like delicate machinery. Giant isopods, distant relatives of the tiny pill bugs found in gardens, may reach lengths of half a meter as they crawl slowly across the deep sea floor. One explanation lies in oxygen. Cold water holds significantly more dissolved oxygen than warm water, providing the raw resources needed to sustain larger bodies. At the same time, slower metabolism can extend lifespans, giving animals more years to continue growing. The result is a deep-sea world populated by creatures that appear strangely oversized, as if evolution quietly turned the scale knob upward in the coldest oceans on Earth. Some animals have evolved even more radical solutions to extreme cold. The Antarctic icefish may be one of the strangest vertebrates on Earth. Unlike almost every other fish, it does not produce hemoglobin, the iron-rich protein that gives blood its red color and carries oxygen inside red blood cells. Because of this absence, the icefish's blood is almost completely transparent, flowing through its body like clear fluid, rather than the crimson bloodstream we expect in vertebrate life. Instead of relying on oxygen-packed blood cells, the icefish absorbs oxygen directly from the surrounding seawater. Its body is built for this unusual strategy. The fish has enormous gills relative to its size and a scaleless skin that allows oxygen to diffuse straight into its bloodstream. In the freezing, oxygen-rich waters of the Southern Ocean, this strange design works remarkably well. But the Antarctic presents another deadly challenge. In many regions, seawater temperatures drop below the normal freezing point of vertebrate blood. Even a few microscopic ice crystals forming inside tissues could tear cells apart and quickly kill the animal. To survive this threat, many Antarctic fish produce specialized antifreeze proteins. These molecules circulate through the bloodstream and attach themselves to tiny ice crystals the moment they begin to form. By binding to their surfaces, they prevent the crystals from growing larger. Without this biological antifreeze, the blood of these fish would freeze solid in the icy waters surrounding Antarctica. While freezing temperatures challenge life in many parts of the deep sea, other regions present an entirely different threat: extreme salinity and toxic chemistry. On parts of the Mediterranean seafloor, massive pools of hypersaline water form eerie underwater lakes known as brine pools. These strange bodies of water can be up to 8 times saltier than the surrounding ocean. Because this dense brine is so heavy, it refuses to mix with the seawater above. Instead, it settles into depressions on the sea floor and forms a sharp, shimmering boundary that looks almost like a shoreline beneath the ocean. For most animals, crossing that invisible border is fatal. Creatures that drift into the brine quickly suffer catastrophic osmotic shock. The extreme salinity pulls water out of their cells, disrupting enzymes, destabilizing proteins, and shutting down the biochemical machinery that keeps living tissue functioning. Many animals die within minutes, their bodies preserved in the dense, oxygen-poor liquid like specimens in a chemical jar. Yet even here, life finds opportunity. Along the edges of these toxic lakes, chemosynthetic bacteria flourish. These microbes draw energy from methane and hydrogen sulfide, leaking from cracks in the seafloor. Their activity forms the foundation of small but resilient ecosystems. Mussels, clams, and specialized worms gather along the margins, relying on symbiotic microbes to convert chemical energy into food. Even in the most poisonous environments on Earth, evolution has carved out narrow footholds where life can endure. As we descend deeper still, the most formidable challenge of all begins to dominate the environment: pressure. At a depth of 6,000 meters, the ocean above exerts a force roughly 600 times greater than the pressure we feel at sea level. Every square centimeter of an animal's body must withstand the crushing weight of hundreds of kilograms of water pressing inward from all directions. In this world, pressure is not just an environmental condition, it becomes a fundamental force shaping the design of life itself. Under such immense pressure, the basic machinery of biology begins to struggle. Cell membranes can stiffen and lose their flexibility. Enzymes that control vital chemical reactions may stop functioning correctly. Proteins risk unfolding from their precise three-dimensional structures, threatening the processes that keep cells alive. Structures that contain gas are especially vulnerable. Lungs, swim bladders, and other air-filled spaces collapse instantly at these depths. For many deep-sea creatures, the only solution is to eliminate them entirely. As a result, animals of the abyss often appear soft and fragile. Their bodies become gelatinous and loosely structured, composed largely of water that can compress without damage. Skeletons are reduced or nearly absent, and buoyancy is maintained without internal gas chambers. The Dumbo octopus, drifting quietly along the seafloor, and the ghostly big-fin squid suspended in the darkness are perfect examples of this strategy. Their delicate, flexible bodies allow them to endure pressures that would crush most other organisms. Yet, even evolution's most elegant solutions cannot overcome every limit. At around 8 kilometers below the surface, fish approach a biochemical barrier that may be impossible to cross. To survive the crushing pressures of the deep ocean, fish rely on a remarkable molecular defense. As depth increases, their cells produce larger quantities of a compound called trimethylamine N-oxide, or TMAO. This molecule acts like a microscopic stabilizer. It protects delicate proteins from collapsing under pressure and helps enzymes maintain the precise shapes required for life's chemical reactions. Without this protection, the machinery inside a fish's cells would simply stop working. But this adaptation comes with a hidden cost. TMAO gradually increases the salt concentration inside the fish's tissues. As the animal descends deeper and produces more of the compound, the chemistry of its body becomes progressively saltier. Eventually, a critical threshold is reached. If a fish were to descend too far, the salinity inside its body would exceed that of the surrounding seawater. At that point, the rules of osmosis reverse. Water would begin flowing into the animal's tissues rather than out of them. The fish would be unable to regulate the flood of fluid entering its cells. Theoretical models suggest this limit lies at roughly 8,200 meters below the surface. Remarkably, the deepest fish ever observed alive, the Hadal snailfish, was recorded at around 8,336 meters. Below that depth, fish vanish from the ocean entirely. And yet the deepest trenches of the ocean are far from lifeless. Below the range where fish can survive, other forms of life continue to thrive in ways that still surprise scientists. Along the floors of the great ocean trenches, amphipods, small shrimp-like scavengers, gather in remarkable numbers. These resilient creatures roam the sediment in search of drifting organic matter, feeding in an environment where few predators remain. Nearby, enormous single-celled organisms known as xenophyophores spread across the seabed like fragile mineral sculptures, constructing intricate shells from tiny grains of sediment. Even deeper, microbial communities continue their quiet work. These microscopic life forms metabolize chemicals, recycle nutrients, and sustain fragile ecosystems at depths that exceed 10,000 meters below the surface. In a place where sunlight has never reached and pressures exceed 1,000 times that at sea level, life still persists. Despite centuries of ocean exploration, the deepest regions of our planet remain largely unknown. Scientists estimate that more than 90% of the ocean floor has never been directly observed by human eyes or cameras. Each new expedition into these trenches reveals species unlike anything previously documented, organisms that challenge our assumptions about the limits of life. So while fish may reach a biological boundary, life itself clearly does not stop there. The deep ocean is not empty, it is simply unexplored. And if journeys into Earth's hidden frontiers fascinate you, consider subscribing to Sunken Realms Deep and sharing these stories with someone who still believes our planet holds mysteries worth discovering. Because somewhere in the darkness below 8 kilometers, far beyond the reach of fish and sunlight, evolution is still writing chapters of life that we have only just begun to read.